Welcome to the Klunatics Podcast. I'm Kirt Graves, and today we have a very special interview with none other than TJ Klune himself, as well as Mr. Michael Lesley and, surprise, me. The explosive finale to the Extraordinaries series, Heatwave, comes out on July 19th, and TJ proposed that we take some time to sit down and talk about how audiobooks come to be and what life is like for Michael and I as narrators. So for the first time on this podcast, which is devoted to and sort of named after him, I'm going to hand over the reins to TJ Klune.
Look, legitimately, a quarter to half the questions I get anytime I do anything is about the audiobook. How did the audio narrator do this? How do they do that? How do they pick this voice? The biggest question I always get asked whenever I do any kind of tour, any kind of event, any kind of virtual thing, is that if I get to choose my own audio narrators. And luckily, that question I've been able to answer yes for much of my career. And Michael and Kirt have both been involved in my career for quite a few years. But a lot of things that are my readers want to know is, how did you guys get started in the first place? Was audio narration something you always wanted to do, or was it something you kind of just lucked into? Kirt, let's start with you.
Very much I lucked into it. I was podcasting, so I had some equipment and I had some technical know-how, and I've been a performer all my life in theater and specifically forensics or high school speech and debate. I was a speech and debate coach, so a lot of the skills that I had in those arenas just made sense in audiobooks. So when a friend said that she was doing it and she was doing it from home, and there was this website you could go to and you could audition for titles, like any egomaniac, I said, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
If she can do it, I can do it. So I just started auditioning, and I got super lucky that some crazy man picked me.
Yeah. Do you have any like theater background? Were you in plays in school, anything like that?
Yeah, all the way through. I didn't pursue acting professionally because I was like the second most talented guy in my high school. And I was like, the second most talented guy from Sheboygan, Wisconsin is not going to make it in like the world of acting. What I didn't know at that time is like there's lots of different jobs in acting, and voice acting and specifically audiobooks were a great fit for me. So maybe that's something I would have considered when I was younger, but somehow I still fell into it. So.
Awesome. Michael, what about you? How did you first decide to get involved with audio? What was your background, and was it something that you wanted to do?
No, I hadn't really conceptualized this. Lucked into it is a nice way of putting it, because it's one of those things that happened in the dawn of a certain era of the internet age, where the site sort of popped up and you were able to do something like freelance from home. I was introduced to it by my sister. We performed a duet audiobook together that didn't get released. It actually got canceled midway because it was pretty awful, and we ended up having some objectionable issues to it. It was it was more sexual than I was anticipating it would be. We did not read it first.
And you were reading this with your sister?
Yeah, sure was.
Oh. No.
But it was a hard thing to get through for a multitude of reasons.
Everything in me hurts.
Yeah, it was rough. And it was sort of like this noir kind of. It was supposed to be gruff, but it didn't make any sense. It was a good introduction to the idea of both performing this kind of work and genre when it goes wrong, kind of. Which is a nice thing to be witness to. But it did give me the leg into, the website and freelancing, and I was able to build a makeshift home studio and sort of like follow the road from that point.
And I have to be honest, I think that's the first time I've heard that origin story. And that is That is one of my most favorite things in the entire world. Now, that is wonderful. But what about your background? Did you have acting experience? Were you in theater, anything like that?
At the time I was doing a lot of writing, actually. From that point, or around that point, actually, is when I started doing sort of like DIY theater. Started a small troupe. It's no longer really a thing, but was putting on a lot of or was a part of these play festivals that were happening in and around Pittsburgh. And it was a cool sort of like confluence of creative interests. But
so you would write the plays that you would then perform?
That's correct. Yeah.
That's awesome. What kind of plays were they?
Like absurd sci-fi kind of plays,
awesome.
High concept stuff. Like there was this one where it was the Christmas Carol, or what's it called, with Scrooge.
Dickens' Christmas Carol. Yeah.
But all the ghosts were Jack Nicholson, because I was convinced that everyone can do like a Jack Nicholson impression.
Right. There are so many to choose from.
Yeah, and then a lot of just like sort of floaty sci-fi freak type stuff. It was fun while it lasted, but it's a lot of effort theater.
Would that be something you'd want to do again at some point?
Perhaps. I don't know. It takes a level of commitment that is, it requires passion, and I think passion can fade, but perhaps.
Do you like being behind the microphone more, or would you rather be in front of a crowd?
I am very intimidated by the crowd. Okay. So I don't know. There's also a thrill to that. I like doing things that scare me. So I like being in the mic behind. When I get into the studio, I feel incubated and embryonic. It's nice. It's a nice like feeling to be separated from the world.
That's good. That's all. So speaking of your recording studio, then obviously you guys work just like everyone else does. So what does a typical recording day look like for each of you? Kirt, let's start with you.
So this answer changes a lot. Right now, the combination that's working for me is Wellbutrin and 4 hours of recording in the morning from 8 to noon. And as long as I'm very regimented about that, I get about 2 to 2.5 hours of audio done a day, which is right on track with what I want. And that's been going well for about 2 months. But ask me again in the winter when seasonal affective disorder sets in.
Right. Do you find that you work better by routine?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to have the same exact time. You're exactly like me. I work better in the morning. And it's something when I'm fresh and ready to go, because as the day wears on, I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. Yeah. But do you ever get to a point where you have to break that routine and have to record at night and do stuff like that if you're on deadlines or anything like that?
Yeah, usually for your books.
Yeah, that's true.
Because they always something.
Who decided that queer romance needs to be 60,000 words and that's it?
Well, and like those Green Creek books, something weird happened every time. Yeah. And so it always ended up being like this weird thing, like, okay, we're going to push it. Oh, but we can't push it that far. So can you actually have it done by this time? And it's like, sure, I'll record the whole book in 5 days.
Right.
So like weird stuff happens like that. Like Under the Whispering Door, there was a time crunch because I was going on vacation and they needed it before I left for the vacation, but I didn't get the book until like a week before I was supposed to start. Not the final version. Like I had a pre-version, but I didn't get the final version until like the week before. And it was just like, all right, TJ Klune, here we go again. We're going to do this whole effing book in a week.
And it can be stressful. On my end of things, there's times when I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'm caught up with my emails. Nothing is being sent to me for at least a few weeks that I know of. I can work on this book. And then 9 times out of 10, I'll get an email saying, TJ, here are edits we got to earlier. TJ, here's this. Or TJ, this needs to be looked at. And I get it. It's part of the job. And I love my job. I love what I get to do. But there is times, like in all things, where it can be very, very stressful. Michael, what about you? What's a typical day look like for you?
Well, the recording is broken up into 3 different sections, which is recording, editing, and then going back and like redoing the voices or fine-tuning voices that I wanted to either make better or create new ones. And so, yeah, for when I'm in recording, it's very typical, like you're saying, get up in the morning. I can usually record like stints of about 20 minutes, and then I need to take a break because the studio heats up. So it's like 20 minutes on, 15 minutes off, 20 minutes on, 15 minutes off. And then get into the afternoon where I can like either go to a coffee shop at the library or something and get some editing done. And that's like a few hours where I'm like really zoomed into what I've done. And then once I finish that full block, then I'm like onto this like stage 3 where I go back and I try to like work on these voices and try to like get them right, which is a little tedious. And I don't know if it's the right way of doing things. Not something I'd recommend. It's just this like style I've sort of made up for myself, and I'm like very committed to it.
It works for you though, right? It works for you. Yeah,
it works. It's just like very time consuming, more time consuming than I feel like it needs to be, which is a little problematic.
Quick question. Do you work in order, in narrative order in the book, or do you work out of order in the scenes, or do you start from the beginning and work your way to the end?
Typically I do read the book in order. I always, usually the first chapter or 2, I will reread. And so I'll use that time when I'm first reading those first 2 chapters to just sort of like be really wacky and like get into the groove of it and like try things. That's where a lot of like, I think that a lot of my choices for like voices are a little too bold. No, they are, they're big sometimes. And it's like, I'm just like, oof, like, whoa, that's a big step there. But some of that comes in that, like that process of just sort of like wheedling my way into the book and trying to like find the tone and get it together. And I know they're going to be throwaway. So that really gives me the like admission of doing whatever I want. And then when I have everything like tonally just in the bag, I'll come back and record those first 2 chapters at the end. And I think it's so impactful doing it like that.
That's awesome. Kirt, what about you? Do you record in narrative order?
Yeah.
Always?
Yeah, it's just
okay. That's good. That's good.
I can't imagine a scenario where I wouldn't, because
right. I get asked if I ever write out of order. I've talked to authors who write scenes out of order, and I don't know how you can do that. I don't know how you can move forward and jump around. It's the way my brain is wired. It doesn't work for me like that.
Well, even what Michael was kind of implying, although his was a little different, like there is an ebb and flow to a book, and the tone, you sort of discover it a certain way through. And if that didn't happen naturally as you're listening to the book, it would be very like some people will say like, oh, I discovered the tone around chapter 6. So I went back and I re-recorded the first couple chapters. And I'm like, doesn't that mean right around chapter 3, there's going to be a big break in tone?
Right.
Because you went from where you were at the end of the book all the way back to the beginning of the book. And it's like, no, it's going to evolve and grow as the book goes on. And as long as they listen to it in order and you recorded it in order, then it's going to sound great.
Can you record more than one book at a time?
I've had to. I wouldn't recommend it, and I'd prefer not to.
Michael, what about you?
I think I've had to as well. I would definitely prefer not to. I like I get into zones. I need to be in the zone. So I like try to block everything else out so I can like sort of stay in that mode, because it's like what Kirt was saying, like you don't want it to be upsettingly like shocking if things change in tonality. So.
Okay.
Well, and the truth is like a lot of us are working on more than one book at a time. We're recording one, we're prepping another, we're negotiating a contract for another one, and then we're getting pickups from the last book we did from an editor that we have to now fix things. And remember all the shit we did 2 weeks ago when we recorded that book. So there's already enough split personality going on. I don't need to add to it by doing like recording this in the morning and this in the afternoon, which again, I've had to do when it's a true time crunch, but I do not enjoy it.
How many audiobooks have you recorded so in your career, Kirt?
I I think I looked on Audible. It was like 140, I think, are out right now, which means I probably recorded like 150.
And when did you start?
With Wolfsong in 2016.
Michael, what about you? How many this is not a comparison.
It is.
Bigger is better.
Hey, yeah, but 30, like 30.
That's insane still, because when did you have your first audiobook come out?
2014, I think.
That's insane. That is insane. That, because you guys think about it this way. Everybody listening, think about it this way. These books, especially, I'll raise my hand here, especially my books, they are hundreds of hours of work to get it down to the 12 to 15, 16-hour audiobooks that you get to hear. This is blood, sweat, and tears that these guys pour into these books to be able to get them, not to just the level of quality that I want, but the level that I actually know that they can provide. I have worked with both Michael and Kirt, as I said before, for many, many years. And it's come to a point where I can give them books without needing them to audition for anything, because I know how they work and I trust them with that. And one question I do get from readers a lot is, how much input do authors have in terms of the voices of the characters that you do? Michael, how much input does an author have?
Like none.
Right.
No, I mean, I don't know. It's the connection of the author to the narrator is either non-existent or very dim. I don't know if that's the right word. It's not really, it's like they're done through proxies, so it's not necessarily something that's like discussed and worked out, unless you are working with the author specifically, in which case it might be a little more intensive, that process of finding the right voice, which is, also happens depending on the contract.
Kirt, what about you? Do you ever have to deal with authorial input?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the situation. Like, I do a lot of independent books. I've done about 50 of those in my career. And my strategy is always just to see how much input the author wants to give up front. And I will take in as much as they want to give me before the recording starts. And I will make sure that it makes sense with what I hear in my head while I'm reading the book. And then they get a little preview. They get to hear a little bit of it just to make sure it's on the right track. And then I don't want to hear from them again until it's done.
Do you, how do I want to phrase this? Do you prefer creative control completely, or do you prefer input? Do you prefer being able to come up with, from the text, from your reading of the text, do you prefer to give voice to the characters in the way that you think that they would be, or do you prefer to have input from an author?
It really depends on the book. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's a better way to do it, but some authors are very good at putting into the book the characteristics that we need in order to voice them a certain way. Mm-hmm. They focus more on physical descriptions or vocal descriptions than some other people would, or they just come through more clearly on the page. Other times, and I get this a lot in the contemporary romance side of things, they're a bit more nebulous, and that's on purpose because they want the reader to be able to imagine their leading man or their leading men, right, most of the time in my case. So it's not so specific in writing, but the author can tell me, like, okay, so when I was writing this, I was picturing Matthew McConaughey, and I can be like, great, thank you. That's all I needed to know, Okay. So that's where, like, sometimes the author input up front is very helpful because they can fill in some gaps that they don't put into the book. Other times authors are very hands-off and they're like, no, it's it's on the page, take it and do what you're going to do with it. And publishers feel very strongly that we should have very little contact. So
yeah, that's something I have noticed, and it's still something to this day I don't quite understand how there needs to be a middleman between an author and the person narrating their work. Because if you think about it, authors put, for the majority of us put our blood, sweat, and tears into everything that we do and everything that we write. And to have a proxy in there can be kind of strange a little bit, But let's actually talk about specific books now. Michael, you are the narrator for the Extraordinaries series, including the Extraordinaries, last year's Flashfire, and the finale Heatwave, which comes out from Tortine on July 19th. You embody Nick and Jazz and Seth and Gibby to just perfection. Can you talk about how you came to be involved in the recording itself?
Yeah. So at that point, when you announced that the Extraordinaries was coming out, I was in the midst of two series, Tales from Verania and At First Sight series, with you. This was a case which is pretty extraordinary in itself, of me reaching out to you to ask about if the narrator has been cast yet. And I think that somehow worked to push a magical button in some shadow realm where I was able to get the job, which was extremely exciting. Just like the notion of it being like a superhero book and YA and this coming of age story. I had no idea what the story was actually about, but just like knowing that you had written it, and I believe the cover was just this like explosion of colors.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. That vibrant color that it was. It was the outline of Seth and Nick, and then just this vibrant like fuchsia and red, everything behind it.
It's just like, yeah, so jubilant and so exciting. And I, took a stab. It's not something that I think that people typically do. I've never done it otherwise. And I can't believe it worked out. I mean, it was so special and enchanting that I was able to land it.
It to me, when I got that email, all I said, yes, absolutely. I'll see what I can do. I don't know how much sway I have. Sure, let me reach out to him. And then like 24 hours later, I was like, holy freaking crap. All right, here we go.
Yeah.
And it's the fact that we get to that we get to have a 16-year-old out queer kid with ADHD who, yes, he can sometimes get in over his head, even if he has the best intentions. But I think it's so important that we get to see a kid like him being able to thrive. And with this, of course, we're able to bring your theatricality into it, because like the Tales from Verania series, there's a large cast of characters here who are very larger than life. So can you talk about what went into the recording of the series thus far? Because are you in process of recording the last book currently?
No, the last book is done, has been submitted. Yeah, very exciting. Awesome. Yeah, that was an intense endeavor too, because right at the start of my recording last month, I got COVID.
Oh really no!
Yeah,
oh, no!
Mega. It was a mega bummer, and it was like 2 weeks that I sort of lost. So the process of like pushing it forward, it became pretty intense. But I'm very, very satisfied or happy with the end product. Starting the first book of Extraordinaries was kind of dramatic, because I started recording on March 8th, 2020.
Oh,
and yeah, and I was living alone. And like seemingly the world was just like starting to fall apart completely outside. And it was like my headspace was very rattled. And this book has this sort of mystique to it that's very there's just all of this like this aura. It's a looming aura of like good and evil, and just the, what would I call it, the thing that makes people extraordinary, this like looming power that exists, and it was like this thing that I could dive into, this world that I could dive into and really use it to escape, because I was like kind of frantic. It was an anxiety-ridden experience, but it was nice because it's like, also the thing about Verania that I really like is that because it's a fantastical world, I can sort of make my rules about it. And that includes like giving people voices or giving logic to, I mean, like you obviously impress the greater source of logic, but then I sort of like find other intuitions around whatever is written on the page. And the fact that it was like a sort of proxy for, I guess, New York City, Nova City, I sort of was trying to be like, all right, so this is a new city that's on like the East Coast of the United States, because there are like specifics that are US and contemporary. Like, it's not a fantastical world. It's a United States city that's not a real city. And these kids coming of age in this new city, and these superheroes surrounding it, which is like really, it invades the logic of the story and how people think and how people interact entirely. And so it was really a journey to jump into that at that time.
Who is your favorite voice that you did in the whole series? Do you have a person, a character that you're more proud of? I'm sure you're like me, that you love all your characters equally, but is there one that you're just maybe a little bit more proud of that you want people to listen for?
Yeah, I do like a lot of the characters. So I get influenced by the television that I'm watching a lot. Mm-hmm. And right before I started Extraordinaries, I watched Better Call Saul, which
yay!
Yeah, in my opinion, it's like one of the best shows right now. I strongly recommend it. Everyone should watch
episodes left. Sorry.
But so I modeled Dad on Jonathan Banks. Which I don't know. It's just like, there's a voice that's like these. I watch enough of the television that I like. It just sort of like floats around in my head, and I hear these voices, and then I'm starting to imitate them on like my dog walks and such. And it just sort of like, hey, I have been practicing this voice. Let's see if it kind of works at this character. I think I tried out like several different things with the dad, and I had to go and retrofit that voice when I was like maybe 7/8 done with the book. But I'm really satisfied with how it works so well, because he has such like a gravity to him, but also there's this like, not hidden, because I don't think he's like, I don't think that he is, his vulnerability is just so striking and so honest without being repressed. It's very fascinating the way that the character is written. And I think that I can't imagine what voice you had thought for him anymore, because it's so grounded to this interpretation that I have. But I'm just always surprised with how much it works with what you've written.
That is awesome. And I will never, ever, ever be able to look at Jonathan Banks ever again now without thinking, oh, it's Aaron Bell. That is awesome. Kirt, you are the narrator for the Green Creek series, which we just got to show. We're recording this on the day when we announced the new cover. And most recently, you did the narration for Under the Whispering Door. And when I was sitting down to write out these questions to think about this discussion, I realized that I don't know why this never really hit me as strongly as it did. I have Kirt for angst and Michael for comedy. Kirt, do you prefer doing stories that are heavier, or do you like doing comedy? It's not to say that the stuff that you haven't done, there aren't comedic moments. I like, for example, I think Green Creek has some very big comedic set pieces.
Yeah, I think the best stories have both, regardless of which way they lean. And so what I like to do are books that have range. And you give me that.
Oh, thank you. That was very nice of you. So in Under the Whispering Door, there are 4 main characters, each with an abundance of page time. And since this book, it takes place mostly in one location, and a lesser narrator might have made it feel a bit stifling. But you not only managed to give life to Hugo and Wallace and Nelson and May, but you gave them room to breathe too. Can you talk about what went into crafting the voices for these characters? Was there anyone that was easier than the other, or one that found more challenging?
I mean, Wallace is me in 10 years, I think.
The good, empathetic Wallace who we're shaking our head.
No, the son of a bitch. The asshole who everybody hates.
Oh, no.
I look forward to hitting my late 40s and just becoming a dick.
Yeah.
So
let me tell you, man, I just turned 40 and I can already feel it creeping on in the back of my mind. Every time I see somebody like standing on near my fresh and mowed lawn, I'm like, better not do it.
Mm-hmm.
Better not do that with your dog.
So, I mean, I found a lot of myself in Wallace. I think the other person I found a lot of myself in is May. Mm-hmm. Her intensity and her sarcasm, which I hope was written into the book, because that's the way
Absolutely
I took a lot of
Absolutely
her.
was.
I took a lot of her dialogue. I was like, oh, she's super sarcastic. I
Yep.
hope. I would say the big challenge with that book, which is a reflection of the times we are in, is that even though Wallace Price was the protagonist of the book, and he is white, there were two major characters who are black.
Yep.
And I wanted to make sure I was voicing those characters with respect and sensitivity, and not doing a caricature of a black American.
And also considering the fact that May is a Chinese American woman,
Yes.
too. Absolutely.
And so but also you want them to have a personality. So it's like, let's make sure we don't move into the realm of stereotype while also creating a very vivid portrait of a human being. And so I felt like that was my challenge, and that was the thing that as I was recording, I remember very clearly always being in the back of my head, like, do not mess this up.
Was there, how long did it take you to record this book?
Oh, I think I had more time for Whispering Door. I think it was a full 7 days.
These things are probably going to get cut out of this podcast.
Why?
No? Okay.
Why would I take them out?
Good. So I, as an author, unfortunately, I get to have no say as to when narrators are able to start recording on a book. And it is unfathomable to me that you as an artist, and both you and Michael as an artist and a creator, would be given so little time to do what you do, to be an artist and to create. So when you think about that, when readers, anybody who's listening to this right now, I want you to think about that when you get to listen to Kirt and Michael and any other narrator actually out there who give you these amazing performances, who bring these characters to life, who by now, if I'm writing sequels to books that they've done, they are the voices of the characters in my head. They are under, a lot of times they're under crunch. They are working extremely hard to get out the books that you get to enjoy and get to listen to. And sometimes that timing that they get is not always fair. And I do wish that would be something that could be addressed. And maybe that's something that I need to start talking about now. So let's move on to a little bit more happiness parts of this. As of late, anytime I've been doing talks, I've been talking about the power of queer joy and seeing queer people overcome odds and succeed in finding happiness. For a very long time, it seemed that the only way queer people got to tell their stories was through queer trauma, and that we had to suffer, or we had to get sick, or we had to get killed, all to teach a very valuable lesson to the straight characters in whatever form of media you're watching. I think that we've seen a push for diversity, not just in queer lit, but in other marginalized communities, especially to have queer characters at the forefront telling their own stories. Even now, as we're seeing pushback I'll speak only for the US, but we're seeing pushback by right-wingers in the country who are trying to use an argument from 50 years ago with Anita Bryant saying, oh, we need to save our children because homosexuals are the teachers and the books are indoctrinating the children and we need to save our children. So we are attempting to move beyond the idea of queer trauma while we are still being oppressed from people who don't want our community to be able to read books and to find happiness. So can both of you talk about the importance of telling queer stories that go beyond queer trauma, that we get to see queer happiness? Michael, could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I've always really appreciated your take on this because I feel like it's very assertive. Like my favorite, well, the At First Sight series is where I got introduced to your books, and that was the first book that I did, was Tell Me It's Real. And there was something that was just so like sprightly and effective about just having this perspective. And it was like, wondrous who like fits out that category. And it's not just the queer characters, it's also the supporting cast. And I mean that word like in bold, supporting. It's like this, you create this framework for like a system of living where people are not only accepting, but encouraging. And it's like, it's wonderful. Like just that sort of cloud nine kind of feeling of like, oh, this could be a world where it's like not even a conflict. It's just part of life. Oh, these people are just people and this is how they live life. And to just sort of like another world that you can dive into and really like escape into. And not only that, I mean, like, I feel it's molded culture. Like my favorite scene in Tell Me It's Real is the first time that Paul sees Vince. And I fully feel, and it's wonderfully written. It's like 4 pages of like this moment. And I really, really love it when you like dip into the detail of a moment, which I think that you have a talent for writing out. And I feel like this moment is like fully in this new trailer for Billy Eichner's new movie, Boys.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet. No,
watch the trailer
really?
because it's like, oh my God, that's like a scene out of Tell Me It's Real. And I was like, got big eyes. So it's like, you know.
He's going to walk around with a dog named Wheels.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I get that. It's the loving, being able to see queer characters just living life and how their queerness isn't necessarily their one defining character trait, that they actually get to go out and just be like everyone else. Because I don't know if you know this, but we kind of are pretty much just like everyone else for the most part. Kirt, what about you? Can you talk about what you find important about queer joy, if you find it important?
Yeah, I think it's a complicated and nuanced conversation for me, because I do think in a lot of ways art, and in this case we're talking about books and audiobooks, but art can be therapy for people who don't see themselves in the media, or see themselves in their neighbors, or see themselves in the communities in which they live. Queer people are often isolated from a very young age when we realize we're different or wrong, even if we can't name it or we don't know what's going on. So I think it can be very therapeutic for queer people to experience these books. On the other side of it, I also think it can really build empathy for people who aren't queer, to read about our experiences that aren't stellar. So I think it's important to have both. I love reading books where I can imagine, like Michael said, the world in which we don't have to deal with the homophobia and the bullshit and the prejudice, because that makes me feel good. And that's not stuff that I got to experience growing up. The experience of reading a queer book is not something that made me happy when I was younger. And now there's more queer media that makes me happy. And I think that that's really awesome.
So,
but I want other people to understand that, like, there are still parts of the United States where it is very hard to be queer, and we're pretty lucky here still.
Yeah, there are, you would, let's put it this way. With the fact that abortion rights in the United States are under attack right now, that is one step closer to Obergefell, queer marriage in the United States being overturned and supposedly left to the states to decide. We get to have moments of happiness in the real world, but they can feel fleeting. They can feel like they can be snatched away from us at any possible time, especially now when you see kids in Texas and in the South wanting them and their parents to go help and seek gender affirming care, could potentially be reported for that or charged with a crime of some kind.
So I'm in favor of queer joy. I think it's good, as long as it doesn't turn into apathy on the part of straight people who think that we've solved all our problems and we can shut up now.
Yeah, specifically after Obergefell in 2015, all the wits online, all the straight people saying, well, I guess homophobia is over now. I guess that solves homophobia.
We fixed it.
Right. But that's not how any of this works.
Right.
So speaking of queer joy, I've been thinking a lot lately, as I'm getting into my old age, about what advice I would give to the younger version of myself. I thought about it from a business perspective. What would I give 2011 TJ advice on versus where I am now? And I also have conversations with myself about what kind of advice would I give 16-year-old TJ now? What would I tell him about where he's at and how it's going to be and what he could do to make his life better? So, not to get too deep, but if there is advice, what advice would you give to yourself as a narrator first starting out, now that you are more further on in your professional career? And what advice would you give to a younger version of yourself? Michael, let's start with you.
This is an interesting question. Just because it's like, I don't know if I'm good at advice. And I also don't think that I would listen to advice from a future me, because I would be like, all right, get out of here, adult. So I don't know. I thought about this question for a while. I don't think that I would. I think that if I had the time machine and I had to go, create a paradox, talking to my former self, probably just talk about like things going on, and just sort of like real therapist, like just like take it all in and just say, and let that ellipsis sort of like fall on the haunch of advice, quote unquote, because I don't actually think that I'd be good at giving it.
I could just see the younger you asking a question. What's 2022 like? Is everything wonderful and nothing hurts?
Just like roll my eyes and push my palm into my forehead.
Right. Sigh, groan, and just.
You're not gonna believe it, kid.
Is there anything that you would tell the audio book narrator just starting out with what you know now?
No, I don't think so, because I think that my success has come with like just sort of bucking the rules and doing what I want. And so I don't know if that's necessarily the best way of doing this work. But I've enjoyed it when, it has succeeded. It's almost like the point of like, hey, 9 times out of 10, flop on the floor, but that one time. And so I just like, I don't know. I don't think that at this moment, I don't feel like I'd want to give any advice to my professional former self either.
Kirt, what about you?
Advice to my younger self, go get therapy earlier.
Yay.
Go right away. Spend more on coaching than you do on equipment, which I guess would be universal advice for anybody starting out today. Mm-hmm. Fail a lot and then get back up and try again. When I was younger, I let criticism, perceived failure get me down a lot more than I do now. And again, I think that's the product of good mental health treatment, which I will continue to say for people who are out there. If you're not getting it, you probably should be. Even if you think you don't need it.
Everybody should be in therapy. Yeah. Everybody should. Even if you don't think you should, trust me, it'll help. Everybody needs a tune-up. Everybody does.
Yeah, but the other reality is that when you're first starting out, there's a lot more time to think about the work that you just did. If you start working more, start getting into authors' heads, start getting into publishers' rosters, and the work starts coming at you, you don't have time to focus on the last thing you did. You have to focus on the next thing you did. And I think that that's probably a healthier way to move through any career.
Taking my books out of the equation, what book did you work on that you're proudest of? Michael.
So I did the Fifth Gender a few years ago, and it was a strange book for me to take on. I guess because I had a lot of trouble, I think, getting the nuances of that tone. So a very like sort of it's like a kind of whimsy that has like a level of like decadence, and there's like a classical sort of style that's impressed upon it, even futuristic book. It's fascinating, like tonally, just to sort of embrace that world and especially the main character's approach to it. because it's really like, envisioning alien thought or alien logic, alien dialect. It's always like, okay, well, we've never seen this before. And I don't know. It took a long time to sort of get it. And then when I got it, I really saw something new. And I appreciated that for what it was.
And that's The Fifth Gender by Gail Carriger?
Correct.
Kirt, you've done books for Gail Carriger too, is that right?
I have, yes.
That's awesome. So what, same question to you then. What, outside of the work you've done for me, what is a book that you're proud of? Something that you look back on and think, yeah, I did a really, really good job with that one.
Sure. I have several answers.
Awesome.
The first thing, I'm very proud of the young adult work that I've been able to do, and I'd love to do more. Hint, hint, whoever is listening to this at Macmillan.
Macmillan Audio.
I'm on the indie side. I'm very proud of the Codename Winger series by Jeff Adams.
Yes. I blurred the first one.
Yeah, you did. I mean, it's a wild ride. They're excellent.
They are very, very. Jeff
side.
Is a wonderful author.
Wonderful. And they were a lot of fun to put into audio. On the publisher side, I recently did a new adult novel called And They Lived by Stephen Salvatore. It's a modern fairy tale, queer fairy tale. And this is one of those books where the homophobia did exist in the world. And the characters did have to deal with that even as they were going to college. And it's one of those perceptions that sometimes you hear from people, especially, I hate to sound all Fox Newsy about it, but like the liberal elites, but like people who live in certain cities in the United States forget that there are folks who live in the middle who deal with homophobia every day.
Every single day.
Every single day. So
yep.
It's just one of those books where like it existed in that world where the characters had to think twice about what they were going to say and where they were going to be. But it's also about a young artist who's dealing with body image issues. And there was just so much that I related to in the character. And I really enjoyed getting to know the author. I mean, much like you, I've just felt a connection to this person through his writing and then found out like he's actually a really good person to talk to as well.
Isn't that good when that happens? That
yeah.
you get, that when you meet people that you who's writing that you like and that they actually get to be good people. I love it when that happens because when it's the opposite, it sucks.
So those are two like young adult YA things that I'm really proud of. But also I just finished a book that comes out this summer. It's called Silkfire. Mm-hmm. Holy crap, was it a lot of work?
Who's the author?
Zabé Eller.
Okay.
I put this in my email to you guys when we were setting up this call. Like, I had to learn a language, a made-up alien language, because this takes place on like another sci-fi fantasy created world. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a city planet, and they have their own languages and their own social systems, and the gender constructs were flipped. So, like, it was a matriarchal society. Mm-hmm. So every time there was, for example, a soldier, I had to fight my own biases to not make that a male voice. And it was just a challenge, but like the best kind. Like I worked so hard and I felt so good about it by the end. And I hope it turns out well in the end, because I don't know, I just send those files off to somebody else and then it's their problem.
And that is Silkfire. And you said that comes out this summer.
Yeah.
And They Lived. Is that?
Yes, that's already out.
That's already out. Awesome. Mm-hmm. That's so cool. Getting back to the last thing here, getting back to talking about Nick Bell, because the reason that we wanted to do this update, this episode was to celebrate Heatwave coming out. So Nick is, as I've said, and as readers will know, and as Michael Shirley knows, that Nick is a chaos demon. He is a devil disguised as a twink. Who is one of those who shoots first and asks questions later, or jumps first and asks questions later, sometimes wearing drag queen jewelry and jumping into a polluted river. So what is the craziest thing that you have ever done that you can talk about that would not get you in any trouble? I will go first just to show that I can roll with it. When I was 11 years old and living in Oregon, my best friend, Kevin, and his older brother, Justin, got M80 firecrackers, which were illegal. And we did not want to get in trouble setting them off. So what do? Well, you live in the forest, so you go into the forest. You go hike up into the mountain, just far away. Just go up into the hills. And we got up there and we found this flat open field. It was perfect. And instead of lighting them and letting them explode, we got the idea in our heads of, what if we lit them and threw them up in the air and watched them explode in the air? That would be cool, right? And so, yeah, we did that. And it was so cool. The first one was so awesome. We were like, yes, 11 years old with big, huge transition lenses, glasses, and probably decked head to toe in corduroy. And I was like, yes. Throw up another one. Yes, it explodes. Throw up the third one. It doesn't explode. Lands on the ground. And we're all like, what the heck? Why didn't that one explode? So that was it. That was all we had. And we start to walk away. And then the firecracker explodes in a patch of dry grass because it had not rained probably 2 weeks. Run down and tell Kevin's mom so we can figure out what to do. And so we run down there. We tell her it's a little fire. It's not a big fire. It's just a little fire, but it started up there. By the time we got back up there, the forest was on fire and we burned down 3 acres.
Oh my God.
Fire. They had to bring in a helicopter to put out the fire. They had to bring in bulldozers to come and put out the fire. Nobody was injured. No homes or anything were destroyed. It was just a land of forest that, I was grounded, I think, for like a year because of that. And oh boy. So yeah, I burned down 3 acres because we wanted to see firecrackers explode in midair. So your turn. What is the worst? What is the craziest thing you've ever done? Michael, go.
Yeah, I mean, I got a few stories. I had one planned, but yeah, your story did remind me of this plush toy. It was like this little red dog. We were trying to blow up with firecrackers and we weren't able to actually like pull it off because the firecrackers just weren't doing enough. It's like, maybe we get some like stuffing out of it. We want to see like a big old explosion, Yep. TV worthy.
Yep.
And so in my garage where there was a car, it was like a 2-car garage and 1 car was in there, and created this, I think it was like a bucket of paint thinner, put the dog inside of it. And I don't know, I was like 11 or so. I want to give myself the benefit of that. I was somewhat young. I was 17 years old. No, I don't know. I was young. And so we lit the thing and it was like, whoa, cool. Like, well, we burned this thing to a crisp. All right, I guess we're done. And I'm like, all right, well, this isn't going out. Well, let's just pour it out. We poured it out. This giant puddle of paint thinner, like that like licking kind of blue flame, just spreading across the garage. And it was like under the car. And I was just like, quick, get the hose. And it's like, listen, children, please don't try this at home. But in case you do, there is something you should know. It's that water will not help the situation. It'll just ignite. And so the puddle just got bigger and fiery, more and more fiery. Luckily, we stopped putting the water on it at a certain point. But I fight or flight. And I unfortunately went with the latter. I just ran away from the situation, hoping it would go away on its own. But car did not blow up. And I felt very stupid about it. I got grounded for it.
Kirt, what did you light on fire?
Nothing. What is wrong with you people?
I was hoping there was going to be like a trifecta. Kirt would have been like, guess what, guys? I burned down my house.
No.
Can I tell the story that I had planned for this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll make it very short, which is just that there were these open auditions for the theater program at my high school. It was like a pretty big high school. And so you could like go in and do whatever monologue you wanted. And so I made my sister choreographed an entire dance to Mr. Burns' See My Beth from The Simpsons. And I was a freshman in high school. And I was like, because I knew that the theater director was a big Simpsons fan. And I was like, this will knock him dead. And I performed this whole choreographed routine with costume changes and props and singing the song. I'm not a good singer, and did the whole thing to silence. And it was like legitimately one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. And that was like kind of the beginning of high school. So that was the Nick Bell sort of thing that I had the story I had planned. So maybe Kirt.
Wow, that is, man. Please tell me there's video.
No.
Is there video?
Oh, thank God. Yeah, thank God.
I think that we can all agree that we're very lucky that cameras and social media wasn't as ubiquitous when we were children. It did not exist at all, because I can already see it now. 11-year-old TJ Klune is canceled because he burned down 3 acres of a fire.
I'd like to cancel myself because of that.
You know what? At the end of this podcast episode, we can say something. We all learned something today, didn't we? No, wait.
I knew not to do any of those things.
Yeah, I did that. I already knew that too. Okay. Well, then as we will continue on having learned absolutely nothing. But first, as the last thing I want to say here, I just want to take the time to thank Michael and Kirt, not only for joining me to talk about their work, but also for the incredible breadth of their work, not just for the books that they've done for me, but obviously I do appreciate them for that, but for the books that they've done for many authors across the queer community and beyond into other genres of books. So please, please, please support these two. Kirt has a book coming out this summer, Silkfire. Mike has a book coming out this summer. Michael has a book coming out this summer, Heatwave. And where can they find you on social media if anybody wants to follow you guys?
I'm at Kirt Graves on Twitter and at Narrator Kirt on Instagram. And I also have a Facebook group for anybody who wants to join it called Kirt's Audiobook Fair, which is a tribute to the scholastic book fairs of my youth that I used to absolutely adore.
Me too. Those are my favorite days. Those are the Pizza Hut coupons that you go in and get. Yeah.
Yep. So that is the only place I exist on Facebook. So don't bother trying to get in touch with me any other way except through that group. Otherwise, Instagram and Twitter, I'm there almost every day.
And Michael, what about you?
You can find me at Mr. Michael Lesley on Twitter. I think that Michael Lesley is a theology professor at Harvard. So you can follow them too. I mean, it's pretty cool.
Please send him your questions about Tales from Verania.
About Tales from Verania. Yes, absolutely.
Any of the graphic sex scenes or anything.
What exactly did Gary mean by this? Was it his bakery?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Stand in the bakery.
It has been a delight, as always, to chat with you and to be able to know you and work with you. And I hope that we get to work together for many, many years to come.
Ditto.
Well, keep writing those books, bitch.
Motherfucker, get off my back. Shut up. Yeah. See me? I wanted to end this on like we're all together kind of note. And then I realized that I can't do that because we're us. And that's not how any of this works. So fuck you guys. And thank you so much for being in my life.
Yeah,
fuck you too, TJ.
And that should be a perfect ending for the podcast.
Yeah, it will be. Awesome. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Klunatics Podcast. Don't forget to stay subscribed because you never know when an episode like this might drop in the future. TJ certainly has a lot of work coming out in the coming years, many exciting things to talk about. So you just never know when we might pop back up in that feed. If you haven't already, make sure to go order Heatwave coming out July 19th, whether that's ordering the book from your local bookstore, getting the audiobook, preferably through Libro FM, or the ebook. Whatever suits you. You do you, boo. But, buy the book. So, you do you, but also do the thing I'm telling you to do. Thank you to TJ Klune for taking the reins on this episode. Thank you to Michael Lesley for participating. And a special shout out to Macmillan Audio for producing TJ's audiobooks. We'll see you next time.